Eating Soup Alone is a podcast hosted by me, Christopher Crumley, and co-hosted by Nicholas Johnson. We try our best to ramble incoherently about a handful of movies at least once a week.
Oh boy, that Magnolia soundtrack with... what's her name?
Amy Mann.
With Amy Mann. What a great soundtrack. You know what movie also had a great soundtrack, Chris?
What movie?
Surprisingly? Carrie.
Yeah.
There were a lot of times during Carrie that me and you were like, yo, what the fuck? This is such a good song.
Yeah, it's like, who the fuck?
And they're not even songs. They're just background, just bops. It's so good.
You mentioned that it kind of reminded you of Bully, the soundtrack to the video game
Oh,
Bully.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it just reminded me of, we've discussed this before, you know, some of my favorite soundtracks are just... It sounds like a guy with just a shitty keyboard sat in his room with the lights off and just recorded it. And there's more instrumentation here, but yeah, the soundtrack to Carrie sounds very much so like a couple of people in a garage just being like, fuck, we're out of money. We need something to play in the background in a good way.
For specifically like the upbeat scenes.
Yeah. We spent all the money on the creepy music for the second half. So Carrie, overall,
Yeah, what'd you think?
Saw it for the first time since having seen it 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Let's hear about that experience a little bit. Going into it.
My father, big Stephen King guy, which I feel like a lot of dads are. I don't know why I might be just imprinting this because of my dad, but I feel like dads love Stephen King.
My dad loves Jurassic Park, the book.
Okay, well, my dad loves Stephen King. Jurassic Park, the book?
I know it's a fantastic book.
Was it a book before it was a movie?
Yes.
Oh, it's way funnier to me that your dad is like, oh, I love the novelization of Jurassic Park.
No, other way around. It's a very long and I think critically acclaimed and just all around loved book. It's the same thing as like Harry Potter, where people are like, oh, the book's better. The movie is not as good as the book.
But yeah, my father loves Stephen King, so I was exposed to a lot of Stephen King stuff as a kid, and I think he probably showed me Carrie when I was far too young, and maybe I blacked it out, or maybe I was like, this is old, I don't like it. But
Can I piggyback off that real quick?
Yeah.
I would love to watch Akira for the podcast.
Akira?
Akira is a very important movie in my, I guess, like, origin story that I've built for myself. Because growing up, my folks let me watch whatever, especially my dad, who found it very funny. He's probably 23 at this point. I'm like 4, you know. Him and his brother showed me South Park.
Yeah.
Because on my biological dad's side of the family, very religious. And by proxy, my jaw was just on the floor the whole time. And they thought that was so funny because all the swearing and yada. But Akira is the first movie because there's either a rape scene or an attempted rape scene or a groping scene in an alley where it was the very first time that I can remember my parents telling me to look away. And me just being like, what? What could possibly be happening that I gotta look away, you know?
I remember seeing a lot of movies with my dad and me looking away. My dad being like, come on, don't make it weird. And being like, Dad, I'm 7. I should not be watching weird science.
Yeah. So anyways, you said you may have blocked some of this out. Your dad made you watch it, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. And I think just through pop culture, I think most people know the ending of Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
Or
well,
the climax
I guess,
Carrie.
Yeah. Because I said the same shit, and then I was like, well, fuck, there's like 10 minutes of the 15 minutes of this left.
And I remember very specifically the beginning of her in the shower. Not for those reasons, but for the dramatic reasons. I remember her mother, and I remember the end, the climax. And so before we watched it, I was like, just so you know, this movie's a fucking bummer. It wasn't that upsetting watching it. What it was in my mind from 15 years ago was much darker.
Yeah.
But watching it last night, Chris, I fucking love this movie.
I loved Carrie.
It was a blast.
I loved Carrie. Immediately, I love Carrie. I hate everybody who's treating her like dog shit.
Yeah.
And then spoilers, they dump the blood on her, and Carrie gets her fucking revenge. And that whole time, I was like, in my head, I just kept going, "Get him, Carrie."
Yeah, no, I was gonna say it is just
get him, Carrie.
It is just like Midsummer. Just the whole climax. I'm like, people are screaming, people are dying, and I'm like, good for her.
Yeah,
I'm
I
having-
feel really bad about the fact that that's. But seriously, those people are like devoid of empathy to a level where I was just like, "Fucking get them, Carrie. These guys fucking suck."
Like,
Too bad that the teacher dies in the fire, though.
I was gonna say, even the teacher, I like
And
the
her
teacher.
date.
And her date. Oh, and her date. I
Yeah.
liked Mike. Mike was his name. Yeah,
Tommy.
something like that. The teacher, yeah, at some point was like, "Why are you guys fucking doing this? Like, come on, you guys are. Why are you taking her to prom?
Yeah.
You're pulling some shit." And they're like, "We're not." And it turns out at the end, I don't think me and you realize this until the end. They're not pulling some shit. It's the other girl.
Yeah, I genuinely was on the fence like the whole time. I was like, "Fuck, are they being genuine or are they in on this?" And then yeah,
And
by
then,
the
yeah.
end, you know for sure that they're not in on it.
But the teacher, I feel like, even though she's the moral compass of this, not moral compass, but the moral person in this movie, she way too quickly is like, "Nah, well, I guess everything's fine." It's like,
Yeah.
dude, come on.
Yeah, I would say yes, that definitely she should have been a little more hip to what's.
Yeah, exactly.
And then also you pointed out a pretty decent criticism. This is the kind of thing that kind of works really well in a book, and it can also work in a movie. Whatever, I'll get over it. But a small gripe: nobody noticed the fucking bucket in the rafters.
Yeah, exactly.
You got all those people setting up in the fucking.
Yeah, exactly.
You said it first.
Yeah,
You were
they're
like,
yeah, they set up the bucket in the gym at night on a ladder in the rafters, and then the next scene is people the next day in the gym
On ladders.
hooking stuff up to the rafters.
yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed all this. I didn't think I was going to at the beginning.
Yes, a lot of the times when I go into horror movies, I go in, especially from that era,
Yeah.
thinking there's going to be some neat stuff I like. There's going to be a lot of shit that doesn't work. Overall, I'm probably going to really appreciate it for a couple of things, but it's probably not going to be a good movie. Carrie was a good movie.
I
It's a
think
good
all of
movie.
it. I think all of it works. Yeah.
One of the things I want to say at the very beginning is I would love it. Midsummer's a decent example, I think. But it needs to start happening more often. Stop making the horror movies so fucking dark. Scary shit happens well lit sometimes.
Yeah.
And this movie's well lit the whole time. There's no like crazy dark scene.
And yeah, and like
That's great.
We were talking about it yesterday. Something we both really like about The Conjuring is a lot of spooky shit happens during the day, but The Conjuring is just gray the entire
Yeah.
time. There's so much color in Carrie. It's great.
Yeah. I don't like the whole gray thing where they like wash everything. It reminds me of Saw.
The
or
new
like,
Carrie.
Or like the new Carrie, or like some of the remakes of like Nightmare on Elm Street, or
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, or even the Conjuring series. Yeah, there's this whole thing about everything being like grimy, dirty, gray, maybe green.
Yeah, like even in the end,
Carrie
the-
pops. There's color
Carrie
everywhere.
pops. Like even the quote unquote scariest scene in the movie where she's killing everybody at the prom is beautiful.
Yeah.
At points, like she like snaps her head and like the red light turns on and
Mm-hmm.
that looks really good. And then when that stops, everything has like kind of like a blue, like light scheme, blue
Mm-hmm.
and white behind her. But she is, red because she's covered in blood,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks so good.
Yeah. Or even like just when you can see her mother standing behind the door and she's getting into the bathtub.
Oh,
you can
yeah,
see
yeah.
her plain as day. She's not in the shadows or anything like that.
Takes you a second.
So
though.
scary.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so scary.
Um,
So scary that she's well lit even, and that Carrie just doesn't notice. Because you wouldn't notice. You're just
Yeah.
coming home, you're showering.
Before we jump too far ahead, what I was saying was I didn't
Sorry.
think I was. No, you're fine. I didn't think I was gonna like it at first because shit happens in the shower. She gets her period, and then she screams and the light explodes, and that I was fine with. But then she goes to the principal's office, and she's getting angry, and the ashtray starts shaking. 2 minutes after the light bulb explodes, and I was like, oh no. And then another 45 seconds after that, she knocks a kid off a bike with her mind. And I was like, oh no. Because I remember in my mind the build up to the psychic powers being very, very slow.
Yeah.
Until it explodes at the end. She knocks that kid off the bike, and then she almost doesn't do it again.
Yeah.
Until the end. I think she breaks that mirror at one point. So yeah, I think in the end it worked. I think maybe
I do.
I think maybe like don't knock the ashtray off and
Yeah.
don't knock the kid off the bike, and it would have been perfect.
Yeah. See, I slightly disagree. I like that they just established that it's a thing. I think a lot of movies these days are really hung up on that idea that like, oh shit, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. But I like that just from the rip, it's like, no, this is what happens when she gets upset.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I kind of like that. I personally do.
I like Yeah, I agree with you. I just think
It wasn't a hard disagree. I'm just
actually,
saying a little thing.
I
you
think
know?
I think it's those 4 in a row.
It does happen very close. I will say that if they spread it out throughout the movie a little more, perhaps. But I guess
I think
it's blocked into the exposition, right? So they're just trying to establish.
Not even like throughout the movie. Keep it all in the beginning like that, and then forget about it until the end. But it goes light bulb, ashtray, kid on bike, mirror. I think if it just went light bulb, mirror, that would have been great.
Okay.
But again, I'm not mad about it.
Yeah. I also kind of like that it's all in the same day. So she's still upset about what happened. Yeah. And then there's nothing really upsetting that happens, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen anymore. But I do like that, like, throughout the movie, there's, like, I'm going to put my Captain Obvious hat on. I like that there's, like, a decent, like, A-plot, B-plot, right?
Yeah.
Like, the A-plot is, like, Carrie, and, like, in the beginning, there's kind of, like, probably... Sure, like some social commentary to a degree, right? Like you get to see how the principal, a man, handles a woman getting her period. Not very respectful of her. Doesn't remember her name, even, kind of a thing. And then, her mother, the overbearing religious thing, and like how she keeps equating women with sin. I mean, that's a very big thing throughout all of time and every culture, is that for some reason every religion has to vilify woman as being the origin of sin and the temptress and stuff like that.
Fun fact, the mother in the new version, played by Julianne Moore.
Wow.
From Magnolia.
That's neat.
Listen to our last episode if you want
to the last
get
episode.
why I'm bringing that up. Sorry,
but anyways, that's kind of like a slow build, right? Like you get a little bit of like the tension between her and her mom and stuff. And her mom locks her in the closet. Yeah, like Tommy or Mike or whatever his name is trying to convince her to go to the prom, and she goes to the prom, and the prom's so beautiful, and it's like in slow motion. It's a little fuzzy.
When they're
made me wish that I had gone to my prom.
Yeah. When they call her for homecoming or prom queen, king and queen, and they're walking up and there's that spotlight on them and it's in slow motion. Yeah, it is beautiful. And it is heartwarming.
So much of this movie is beautiful,
and it is heartbreaking.
Yes,
because it's Carrie. Everyone knows how Carrie ends, and when they're walking up there and she's so happy, and I'm like, oh no, Carrie, oh Carrie, no.
And then there's the B plot of like Chrissy just being this vile, evil person. Even her like groupie friends are kind of turning on her when they're getting punished, and she's like, I won't stand for this, and her friends are like, we're gonna keep running.
Shut up.
You gotta shut up. Yeah. And then she's plotting this whole thing, and she's getting everybody involved.
To be fair to Christy though, she's getting smacked in the face a lot.
She is. It's kind of one of those things where like
from everybody,
the movie accidentally makes you empathize with the with the villain. It's not trying to.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, she's like getting people to collect the ballots so they can switch them out and stuff like that. And there's just this tension building the whole time of like, shit, what does she have planned? We know what she has planned. But I was suspending my disbelief a little bit and trying to forget about it and just be like, wow, yeah, this really is kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, I could imagine how effective this would really be if I didn't know where this was going. You know what I mean?
Like, okay, sorry to keep harping on it, but thinking about it, if I was being a little shit about something and someone smacked me in the face, I'd probably be like, maybe I need to take a step back.
Yeah.
Second time I got smacked in the face, I'd be like, I'm doubling down. So I kind of get it.
Yeah. And, it's tight, to the point, knows when to linger, knows when to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't even, this is another thing that was said during our viewing. Surprisingly, to a degree, it's not scary.
Yeah.
And I also don't think it's ever really trying to be that scary, except perhaps the mother at the end.
Yeah.
I think of it more of like I don't know, like a thriller or a drama that just happens to have these kind of like horror elements to a degree.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? Because it really does work as like a pretty basic like coming of age story where girls getting bullied and stuff. She happens to have supernatural powers, but it's never ever played up for like any kind of scare or anything like that.
Yeah. I'd say except for the very end.
Yes, the mom is definitely scary. The actress, I can't remember the actress's name.
Her hand
coming out. The Friday the 13th moment.
Yes. But yeah, Eraserhead's wife from Twin Peaks is scary.
Yes.
Her getting locked in the closet and stuff like that is scary. That's like what I remembered the most, and it's not as heavy as I remember it being.
But it's still pretty heavy.
Yeah, but
it's not terribly overbearing.
It's that like age-old thing you hear growing up in high school all the time is like that weird kid. For sure, 100% of the time, has just the worst home life imaginable.
Yeah.
Also, something that I think the strongest decision made in this movie is casting, can't remember her name, but the girl who plays Carrie.
Is it Sissy Spacek?
Yes, it's Sissy Spacek.
Great name.
Sound like a satellite.
Yeah.
Because she is I had this complaint while we were watching it. Everyone's like, "Ah, Carrie, that weird girl. She's such a freak. Haha. Carrie White eats shit."
Very beautiful person. Beautiful. Yeah.
More attractive than any of the girls in the thing. But there are a few times where like a camera catches her at a certain angle or something like that before the climax, where I'm like, "Oh, you're fucking scary."
Yeah.
And
She
then
does have it also like a sinister kind of look, like a
Yeah, and then at the end, very very much so. She just like, because she just has these little eyes.
Yeah.
But at the end, where she's standing on the stage and her eyes
Big
are just
eyes.
very wide, and
Yeah.
she's just like looking down the entire time. I'm like,
Yeah.
you are fucking scary.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy for you.
Kind of a subtle thing, I guess, to a degree. It's not like a big thing, but red-headed people are also usually associated with like being touched by the devil and being,
She have red hair?
kind of like left-handed. Carrie? Yeah, she's covered in freckles. She's a big-time ginger.
She have red hair? I'm pretty sure she's blonde.
It's like probably strawberry blonde, if you want to call it strawberry blonde. But
Oh.
yeah, she's basically a ginger.
Okay, I buy that. Her mom has red hair.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's covered in freckles and stuff. But yeah, same way that like people used to think left-handed people
Yeah.
were, touched by the devil or something. There's also a great scene where she argues with her mom about like, she's like, "You got the power of Satan." She's like, "No, Mama, I read about it in books. Some people do this. They can do. I read about it."
Yeah.
Whatever. I'm in. I'm on Carrie's side, but also nobody else does that, Carrie. Your mom might be right.
I think we really need to watch Carrie 2015 or whatever.
I would
came
be
out.
fine with that
Because the few things I saw from it made me appreciate this movie so much more.
Yeah.
Specifically thinking about her reading that stuff. You just see a few quick shots of her filing.
If she's on a
through those
computer?
things. Hold on. Of her like filing through the things, and then later when Mike or Tom, whatever his name is, asks her out, she just quickly closes a book that she's holding, and they really don't pay much attention to it until later when she's like, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think it's just straight up from the trailer of the new Carrie. She's like, she might be on a computer at some point, but she's like diligently researching like through books and stuff like that. And it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Also, there's a shot of her in her room. I guarantee this is how it happens. Because connect these two shots. She gets all those books. She brings them home, starts reading about it, and then she goes like this and puts her hands out and lifts up her bed and all the books.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, that shit sucks. Also, apparently at the end when she's doing all the telekinesis stuff, she's like doing Magneto hands to like do
Nah, I
stuff.
don't like that either.
Yeah, that fucking sucks. I love that
Well-
Carrie's just standing there.
That's the thing that I like about Carrie is that her mom's lecturing her about like having restraint and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And other than the climax, she does.
Yeah.
She only uses it when she literally can't control herself because she's so upset.
Yeah.
It's not like she's just like going to light a cigarette. She's like, "Fuck, where's the lighter?" And she like Magneto hands it over. You know?
Yeah.
She's not hanging out like a superhero. She wants to be a normal person.
And I also really like, I don't know if this is intentional or not, but I really like when all the psychic shit is happening at prom. For a good while all this shit is happening, no one pays any attention to Carrie. Like, for the rest of the movie, everyone's just kind of running around being like, "Oh, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening?" When very clearly it's Carrie doing it all.
Except for Chrissy trying to run her over with her fucking truck.
No, I think...
You remember that scene?
Yes, no, but I think
Yeah.
like halfway through that, I think maybe the first person that notices it's her is the teacher, and then I
Yeah.
think after that
I
everyone's like,
understand what you're
"Oh,
saying now.
fuck, it's Carrie." Yeah.
But I was thinking even about like when like the ambulances are like whizzing past her while she's walking down the
Just
street
covered in blood. Yeah.
yeah.
And somehow she walks all the way home without being stopped.
Yeah, I love that though. It works.
Yeah. I think besides the shots of her on stage at prom,
Yes.
covered in blood, I think my favorite shot in this movie is when she very slowly walks up the steps into her house.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about that, but I think it was just more of the good for you shit. Just
Yeah.
being like, oh, she's gonna go kill her mom, and just watching her slowly walk in the house, just being like, good for you, Carrie.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I will say it's a necessity because the whole idea is that it's building tension. She has no idea that her mom's behind the door or whatever. But I do like that it shows that intimate moment of her like going home and washing the blood off of her. Because like,
Yeah.
again, it's just one of those things. Like, awful example. Sorry, I'm a psycho, I guess. But like, I think all the time about like, and it just fucks me up. It turns my stomach. It really, really makes me like break out into like a little bit of a sweat. Like it's so, just like I couldn't imagine. And it's one of the things that like. I have to really limit my true crime diet because like things really affect me these days. I don't have the stomach for the same way I used to, but I just think like, fuck, man. Imagine getting back into your Ford Taurus after you dumped a body in a lake.
Yeah.
Just imagine that. You're just driving home now.
Yeah.
What the fuck does that feel like, you know? And it's the same thing where it's like such an intimate moment where it's like, yeah, she's got to go home and wash up. Like, I feel like so many movies, like, I don't know. You don't have to do it in every movie, but it's just a neat thing to see. Like, a battle just ended, and the movies rarely take the time to like show the Avengers go like just fucking take their thing off and be like, oh my fuck, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it would work in any of those ever, and it would be a bad scene to add, but I like in this movie that you get that little thing where she's kind of crying and wiping the blood off and stuff, and it's nice.
But I also do like I because Carrie as a character, she's just a little out there, but at the same time, I love the mindset of murdering everyone in your high school and then going home, taking a shower, and being like, "Well, I guess I'm going to bed."
Yeah, it is a bit funny. Yeah, because what happens next, right?
She puts on her pajamas, and then her mom comes out.
From a well, no, I mean like in general.
Oh yeah, like what's happening tomorrow morning?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the, from a writing standpoint, it's the best move. But Stephen King had to have her die also, because that's just such a loose end. Like,
actually, I think the book ends differently.
Okay.
And Stephen King, I think Stephen King has also agreed that the movie ends better than the book.
Okay. I have no idea how the book ends, but like I would not like the story to end with like her being like tried or going to prison, or like for some reason they just pretend like it wasn't her that did it. I guess that'd be fine if they just pretend like it wasn't her.
The cops chase her, and she goes and she lifts the Golden Gate Bridge up.
Yeah.
Makes a bridge.
I guess what would actually happen is that they'd rule it an
X-Men
accident,
joke
right?
for you. Sorry,
I didn't get it. Is the I'm assuming Magneto lifts the bridge up.
Yeah, and like X-Men 3 or something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that would be what happened, is that just like an X-File, the cops would be like, well, fire started, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And so it would be fine. I guess he didn't have to kill her. Whatever, I'm an idiot.
I'm sure. Well, some people had to have gotten out of there. Yeah. Susie gets out, so
The
people
one that
know
was
it was
being
Carrie.
nice to her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she gets out, and yeah, there's that sign that says Carrie White burned in hell, so people know it was her.
Carrie White eats shit.
I think, like, watching this movie, I was like, I would like to read the book.
Yeah.
But also, all the stuff with her having her period and the girls being naked in the locker room, there's no way Stephen King doesn't go on and on and on and on about that, and there's no way he's not gross about it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm actually currently reading Salem's Lot, and I would like to potentially read Carrie. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll report back at a later date. So here we go. Carrie, closing the book on that.
Real quick.
You have more? You got some fun facts?
I have an ad to wait through. Vamp. Fill time.
Well, if I'm filling time, then I guess I'm talking about Alice, Sweet Alice. Glad you gave me the chance to fill time. Slasher movie from the 60s.
It's just the music we were talking about. All right, anyway. Alice, Sweet Alice?
Yeah. Visually it looks very similar, very colorful. Just another colorful 60s, 70s horror movie. And yeah, just shouts out to, making your movie actually decent to look at. Because I swear to God, there have been maybe 3 horror movies that I've seen in the last 20 years that were bearable to look at. Perhaps, if you want to call it one, The Lighthouse. The Witch wasn't so bad. It was pretty dark, but it wasn't, in my mind, like, terribly gray-scaled or something. Yeah, might be end of list. I don't think Hereditary was that dark. Maybe Hereditary was a little darker than I'm thinking. But yeah, just in general, for some reason over the last 20 years, they've been obsessed with the, making it ooky spooky, but making it super dark and colorless. And that's where I'm going to end it. Alice, Sweet Alice, Carrie, great looking horror films. So anyways, Carrie, it moved me. It touched me. It was beautiful to look at. Tight, good storytelling, in and out. Perhaps there are some things that if you think a little more about, maybe they fall apart, whatever. Whatever. I'm not even thinking about it because I just had a great time watching the film,
My final verdict?
Yeah.
Blues Brothers, you're off the list. You're getting replaced by Carrie.
And speaking of murder...
Speaking of William H. Macy a while ago.
Fargo.
We watched Fargo before we watched Carrie, yeah.
You've seen Fargo before.
I've seen Fargo a number of times, yeah.
Yeah? Talk about that a little bit.
Fargo was one of those movies that everybody talks about being just a great movie. It's like the one, besides probably No Country, it is like the Coen Brothers movie. Actually, no, I'd say that it's the Coen Brothers movie. And I remember watching it probably like first year of college or something like that, and not liking it, and just not getting it. And just being
Why
like,
do you reckon?
I don't know. I think I just didn't get it.
Yeah.
Just always waiting for something like bigger to happen, and it does that Coen Brothers thing where like it's just people just fumbling around for a while and fucking themselves and each other over, and then it kind of ends.
Yeah.
And yeah, at that time I was just like, that sucked. That was kind of dumb, and I don't like it. And everyone has these dumb accents or whatever, and whatever. And then a few years later, I was like, man, I gotta rewatch Fargo. And I rewatched Fargo, and I was like, oh, I fucking love that. That was great. And yeah, it's one of those movies that just every now and then when I got nothing going on, I'm like, yeah, I'll pop Fargo on. And it's just on in the background. And I really like Fargo a lot. I wouldn't say it's my favorite Coen Brothers movie. But I just love, like what I said, it's got the classic Coen Brothers structure. And it is a good, just detective story. But everyone just has these fun, silly accents. And it just brings, and it just elevates it to this just kind of fun level the entire time.
Yeah.
Steve Buscemi's great in it. Francis McDormand is amazing in it. William H. Macy, again, great in everything he does. And yeah, I just think this movie's a blast. No, probably I wouldn't say a blast. It's a great time. I love Fargo.
Yeah, I really did like it. Some contextual stuff to get out of the way. I've seen Raising Arizona. I was very young. I don't remember it. I'd like to watch it again, but I have seen The Big Lebowski, which I know comes out 2 years after Fargo. And Fargo and The Big Lebowski remind me a lot of... It reminds me a lot of North by Northwest. In North by Northwest, the same thing happens that happens in Fargo, in the sense that at every chance for things to get twice as bad, it does. But the seed, the root of that is in North by Northwest, just mistaken identity. And in Fargo and The Big Lebowski, it's always comes back to not just one character, but every character being dumb as shit.
Yeah.
So this is a movie where, like, I don't want to, do the whole podcast this way, but just another quick 30 seconds. You're introduced to William H. Macy. He's got this scheme where he's going to pay people to ransom his wife because he needs money, right? Almost immediately gets a call from his father-in-law that his father-in-law is going to give him the money for what he needs the money for, right? So then he tries to get in contact with the criminals, right? It's pre-cell phones, though. They're on the road.
Yeah. He
talks to the guy who put him in touch with the criminals, and then he's like, yeah, I've got no alternate number for these guys. And he's like, oh, geez, oh, boy, Yeah, the criminals show up to kidnap. There's even a point where I thought when she falls down the stairs, I was like, fuck, they just killed her.
Yeah.
But anyways, like I said, I could go on for the whole movie, but, then you fast forward all the way to the point where, like, the criminals end up killing a cop. And then, they get stopped by the cop. Cop won't take the bribe, so it's already worse. Then the cop gets killed. Then another car comes by and sees them doing that stuff, so they have to kill 2 more people, right? Fast forward even some more, and there's the point where, again, they're only supposed to be, interacting with William H. Macy, and yet the dad insists on going. He ends up getting shot and killed, right? The wife ends up getting killed. Even to back up a little bit, like... William H. Macy didn't even think through entirely how he was going to give these people this brand new car. So now he's got this guy calling him all the time about how, like, hey, these serial numbers don't match up, and I'm going to have to report this by tomorrow afternoon if you can't give me the right serial numbers.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, obviously the cops get involved. They can tell that a call was made to a mechanic who works at that shop, which connects, the criminals to that shop. So now the criminals are rooting around, not the criminals, the cops are rooting around right at where William H. Macy works. There's, again, like, so many moving pieces. And again, like, just at every turn, it gets worse, it gets worse, it gets worse. And it's this interesting balance of just so funny. You could even maybe call it like a farce, right? Like, that's where the comedy comes from. But then also genuinely tense and like a respectable, again, like North by Northwest level, like crime thriller detective type deal, right? That just happens to like Young Frankenstein. Young Frankenstein's always described as like such a love letter to the Frankenstein trilogy that it just feels like the funniest one of the four.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so accurate to the feel of the first three. It just doesn't. It just has way more jokes than the other ones, you know. So yeah, I loved it. It's a wild ride. It's funny, and it made me haha a lot.
Yeah, something I really like about the Coen brothers. Again, I keep saying like stuff like this, like I have other examples, but I don't. So I'll say something I like about Fargo is there are so many like moving pieces, and there are so many things that need to get resolved that it's a movie, so you think about them and you're like, okay, how are they going to get the wife back? How is he going to get his wife back? And like shit just happens that you don't expect to happen, and like sometimes it kind of happens off screen, and you're like, oh, of course. Like the two of them getting the two kidnappers getting angry and angrier and more violent. It's like, oh, of course. Or his father-in-law being like, I'm gonna do the deal. Yeah. Okay, it's my money. It's like, oh, of course.
And it's of course because again, it's rooted in the fact that William H. Macy is a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Like he wouldn't think, oh, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he would think it would just go off without a hitch.
Yeah, exactly. Or when Steve Buscemi comes back and you just look over and the wife is dead on the floor, and he's like, what happened to her? And he's like, nah, she started yelling a bunch. It's like, oh, of course. Mm-hmm. Of course these guys are just gonna kill her.
I also just real quick, such a funny scene when he's like using a log to push Steve Buscemi's foot in, and she's like, hands up, you're under arrest. And it's so loud that like
yeah and I love he looks at her and she's like, police, and she points to the badge on her head. Yeah, I love her Zodiac husband. I love anytime you see them, they're either in bed or eating with each other.
Yeah, also maybe pretty kind of like Magnolia. Anytime a movie's set in the Midwest like that, and it's like that sleepy depiction of what the Midwest is, it's like a bittersweet thing where I'm like, oh, look at this. It's snowy and it's quaint and they're driving, and then there's just so many scenes of people eating in bed. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's what my mom and her husband does. And it just kind of bums me out. And I'm like, fuck, dude.
Yeah, no.
Is this like, my future? If I stay here, is this my future?
Especially her like waking up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and him getting up to make her eggs, and it's just cold outside. And I'm like,
which is sweet. It's so sweet.
It is, but also knowing it's cold and there's and she has to go outside to clean off the car. I'm like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I hate this shit so much.
I will say the accents grated on me a little bit, but that's such a minor gripe.
I agreed with you the first few times I saw it, but after seeing it so many times, I just love it.
Yeah.
Like it all feels like the guy at the end who's just shoveling, talking to that cop, talking about seeing Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, that's so good.
And he says, what do you think I look like? And I said, what do you think I look like? I don't arrange these kind of deals.
He's like, what do you think I look like? Some kind of jerk? Only he didn't say jerk.
Yeah, I just feel that way about everybody. Like, yeah, these just big heady conversations about kidnapping and paying off kidnappers, but also the cops coming around and stuff like that, and just oh gosh, I love it.
I like when she's interrogating the prostitutes and they're like, well, yeah, you know, and then he had kind of a funny face or whatever, and they're just going on there talking about like nonsense, or she's like, oh, he smoked a lot, I think it was like a subconscious thing, you know, those things happen. And then Frances McDowell was like, yeah, they do happen. And she's like, yeah, they do. And it's just like, strip the North Dakota or whatever accent off of it, and like I feel like, not to be an asshole, but again, being in the Midwest, like there's so many times where like I'm at a gas station and some dude's just telling me a story kind of like that about someone I don't know, as if I know them and stuff, and I'm like, hey, you know, I met you 40 seconds ago. Like, what? I don't know who your uncle is. I don't, you know, like just recently the neighbor was like, was I with you or was I with Delaney? The shirtless neighbor across the street, who I think, very sadly, might have a drug problem. But he was just like, yeah, you know, my dad lives here. I don't live here. I'm actually in town because, like, one of my buddies just died. It's real sad or whatever. Funeral's on Friday. So I'm in town until Friday, until that happens or whatever, just for, like, 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm sorry, your name is? You know what I mean? Which is totally fine, whatever, not a big deal. But the grander statement I'm making is that a lot of those things feel very real. It's a lot like living in the Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, I not so much the guy across the street, because that's like a lot's going on what he's telling you, but exactly what you said, like gas station attendants or like random people you meet, where it's just like, yeah, and I think he looked like him with a Marlboro Man, but that might have been just because he was smoking cigarettes, and that's a subconscious thing. It's like, hey, this isn't a story.
Yeah.
I don't know why you're telling me
Yes.
this. You were just thinking to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love that with the conversation with two of them. Funny looking how? Could you describe it anymore? No, just kind of funny looking. He
I
was
like that
uncircumcised, so he slept with the little one? Ah, yeah.
Yeah, hilarious. And also just funny that the other tipster, and I says to him, that guy.
Yeah.
He also says the thing. He's like, and he was kind of funny looking. He's like, funny how? He's like, just funny looking.
Yeah. Everyone
It's
who
funny that
describes Steve
everybody
Buscemi
says
is like, yeah, just funny looking. Yeah.
Yeah. Also neat, just a little thing or whatever. There's the No Country for Old Men moment where Steve Buscemi stashes the cash.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And never comes back for it.
Nope.
Spoilers. Doesn't get the chance to come back
Some
for it.
fucking guy in Fargo season 1 gets it.
I also love just the last 15, 20 minutes or whatever that we were just Steve Buscemi's so over it. Like when the dad shows up and he's like, Jesus fucking Christ, what is it with you idiots?
Yeah.
Drop the fucking money. What do you think this is? It's not a fucking game, Like he's basically saying I have your fucking daughter. I will kill her. Give me the fucking money.
Yeah.
And then when he shows up the cabinet, he's like, here's your fucking money. I'm done. He's like, you can take the fucking my truck or whatever. I'm taking the car or whatever. He's like, no, we split the car. Someone has to pay for their half of the car. He's like, but even before he says that someone has to pay for the other half, he's like, how the fuck do you split a car? And he's like, no. He's like, you get my truck and you get the money and I'm fucking out of here. I got shot in the face today,
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely at his wit's end, which is, again, just one of those things where, by no means did the movie have me worked up like that. Most of the time I was going, ah-ha-ha. But, yeah, I'd probably be Steve Buscemi in this situation. Any normal person would, because most normal people are, not as dumb as the characters of Fargo. They'd probably be at the point where what the fuck did you any of this? Did you think any of this through? Please, can I would literally be like, I'm going home. This isn't worth my time. I'm not going to get money out of this. You guys have fun shooting each other. I'm out.
Yeah, no, I love Steve Buscemi is so good in this movie because he's so fucking funny.
He's the straight man, kind of, in a sense.
Yeah, and he plays none of it for laughs. He's just pissed off at everybody the entire time. And I don't know why it's so fucking funny to me. It makes sense why he would be doing it. But just after getting shot in the face, the fact that he just has a napkin stuck to it the whole time, it's so fucking funny to me.
Oh, let's walk it back for a second. I also love the interaction where he's like, hey, be cool. Don't worry. I'll get this police officer to go away. And he's talking to the police officer, and he's like, I just didn't get a chance to yet. I want to be in total compliance with you. And he tries to bribe him and stuff. And he's like, I'm going to smooth talk my way out of it, and it doesn't work and whatnot. And then I even like his buddy or whatever being like, oh, yeah, you're a real fucking smooth talker, or whatever he says, that whole thing. So, yeah, mainly just, that Steve Buscemi thinking he can do it. Probably could, but it's, again, just one of those things where it's like, you're in North Dakota. That cop probably has that delusion in his head that he's like, buddy, I don't take bribes. I'm out here to keep the great state safe, He doesn't say that, but you can assume that that's that's what he's operating
I like
under,
when he is talking to authority figures in the movie. Yeah, he tries to smooth talk that guy. And then when he's leaving the parking garage, he's like, I was here for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And he just gets angry with them. And he's like, you know what, fuck you. Yeah, this is your little domain or
clip-on
whatever.
tie.
And then the last guy he talks to, he just goes, open the fucking gate. It's so good.
Because he's bleeding everywhere. Yeah. I can give it multiple points. 1 point for just the thing the Coen brothers do the best, which is writing such a smart movie about just the dumbest folk.
Yeah. I'd really like to watch Burn After Reading.
I would like to watch that. Yeah, I haven't seen that. And also just being, again, a tense movie that actually, much like Carrie, in the sense that strip the idea of them being idiots away the same way that you might strip away the supernatural element of that movie, and they're both interesting movies.
Yeah.
Before even the really neat thing about it, right?
Yeah, a guy paying kidnappers to kidnap his wife so they can split the ransom money. Yeah, that's insanely interesting. And then you make them all from Minnesota.
Yeah.
And you have them played by Steve Buscemi. It's
great.
great.
Oh, jeez. Also the scene where William H. Macy kind of pulls kind of a Steve Steve Buscemi in the sense that he's doing a sleight of hand where he's like, I'll go do a lot count right now.
Yeah.
And then Francis McDormand's like, he's driving away. Oh my God, he's fleeing.
I don't know
how do you make an outgoing call?
Yeah, that's so good. Also, I love, like, there's like no reason for it to be in the movie, but when she goes on that date with that guy, not the date, but she meets up with that guy from high school, and he's like, oh, my wife is dead, and it's so hard, and I just thought you were always so nice to me.
And then like 2 scenes later,
she gets a call, and he's like, oh no, he's insane.
I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. Genuinely, that's the one scene that I've been thinking about all day because we saw it last night. I was like, why is that even in there? I'm not saying take it out, but like...
I read online that the Coen brothers put it in there because they were like, we should have a scene with her that doesn't involve her husband or the case. She should have something else going on in her life, so her life just isn't about those two things, you know. Maybe final note on Fargo, something I really enjoyed. The end. She's driving away with Peter Stormare in the back of the car. She's like, all this for just a little bit of money.
Yes.
And being like, yeah, there's more to life than just that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a nice little monologue. But then she's at the very last scene, she's in bed with her husband. And he's like, I won the thing. They picked my picture of the mallard, but she's like, oh, that's so great. He's like, yeah, it's just the 3-cent stamp though. Nobody uses those. And she's like, oh, people need those all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When they come up, when they raise the prices, everybody needs those little stamps because they got all the old stamps still.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such
Beautiful.
a sweet little moment.
It is very sweet.
I love it.
Especially brush those two against each other, right?
Yeah.
To do all that bad for a little bit of money. To do all that good for just a little bit of money. You know?
It's great.
I will say that, yes, very sweet. You put it very beautifully. I agree. I will also, on the topic of the all that for a little bit of money thing, that's one of the things that always gets me about cop stories is mainly that, right? Like, that's a lot of what it boils down to. It doesn't matter if you're watching, like, Forensic Files or Dateline or Columbo or Fargo or whatever it is. There's always a little bit of that where it's like, all that because you wanted to divorce your wife? You know, you murdered her? Couldn't just get a divorce? You know? Or, like, all that over $10,000, or all that because your mom wouldn't like help you with this payment or that payment, or because you had this debt or you had that debt, or you caught this person kissing that person or whatever it is. It always comes down to, and again, much like Fargo, criminals always go into it thinking like it's just gonna go off without a hitch, right?
Yeah.
And so those are two elements that are just I don't know why I'm saying this because it's a strength of Fargo, but I guess it's just the strength of like the genre and the conventions of that story in a sense. Any crime story is just that's something that always obviously gets everybody, not just me. So again, I don't know why I'm saying it, but I really do like those two elements of just like, really, I thought it was just gonna go well, William H. Macy, and then on the other side of the coin, like the two criminals, like really all of this for $40,000, you know?
Now that I think about it, you briefly said something about the man himself. Can't think of her name, but Frances McDormand's character in this movie, very Columbo.
Yeah.
She does get pretty lucky sometimes when she drives across the car and she sees William H. Macy leave.
Also one of the smarter characters in this story.
Yeah.
Her and Steve Buscemi, I think, are probably the two.
She does, I wouldn't say very simple, but just rudimentary detective work.
She just pays attention. She's observant.
She pays attention.
Right? There's that moment where she's like, I don't agree with your detective work there, Lou.
Yeah, exactly.
DLR? I think those are dealer plates.
But yeah, and at the same time, she's just this pregnant Minnesota woman who just waddles into her room, and everybody. She's in
no real rush. She's on Minnesota time,
and everybody underestimates her. Like William H. Macy trying to strong arm her. Like, listen, I'm answering your questions. Like, I don't need to do this anymore, or whatever.
And she never loses her cool.
She never
doesn't care. She's like, hey, I'm in the right. Like, I'm not a dumbass. I know what's going on.
And like, she never really says it, but you kind of get the feel that she's getting it. It's just like Columbo. I think you said this yesterday when she's saying things to William H. Macy. None of it's really a surprise to him. And I feel like you kind of see her pick up on that a little bit. Yeah,
that's another just side note. Me saying obvious things about, you know, crime and crime shows and crime podcasts. I just love that detail too. That like that's the one thing detectives are like primarily looking for is who doesn't seem like this is news to them.
Yeah.
Who seems like they already know. Because that's my prime suspect. Whoever seems the least shocked by the news. Because it's that thing, right? Like, no matter how good of a liar you are, you cannot feign the natural response to shock, you know? Or else people would be getting away with crime a lot. Serious crime. I mean, very serious crime. But also, to be fair, the conviction rate on murders is only something like 60%, I think. So you basically got a 50-50 chance of getting away with it.
Great odds.
So there you go. There's a little advice for you. You get a 50-50 shot. Although, you know what? You do it, and then if you do it in a house, perhaps a family would move in, and then perhaps immediately after that, a ghost hunting couple might show up and try to exploit the story, as if you guys had perhaps been haunted by whatever evil convinced you to murder somebody, and then they could write a book about it, and that book could make them lots of money, and then that book could become a movie that spawns 10 sequels, and maybe make some money. But also, the Amityville Horror was one of the worst horror films I've ever seen.
Yeah, but that doesn't seem to work out for the murderer.
No, but it's kind of like a legacy, right?
I guess.
So?
I'd rather be the ghost.
The ghost wasn't real the whole time. That's
Oh, fuck.
Anyways, yeah. I don't even get the thing, like, I hear people say it all the time, especially when I listen to, like, true crime podcasts and stuff. They're like, hey, I get it, you know? I hate people, too. You know, some fucking asshole I fantasize about. You know, someone who, like, maybe molested their kids for 12 years. I think about, like, God damn. You know, sometimes I fantasize about murder. Just stuff like that. I'm sure you've heard that before, right?
Yeah.
Where people talk about that, like, hey, I get it. I'm an angry guy. I fantasize about murdering people all the time. Never once.
Yeah.
I have definitely had intrusive thoughts where I'm just like, oh my God, like, imagine if I did murder somebody. Like, the way that my sister would look at me, or my parents, I'd be in prison for, like, that kind of a thing, where I go down that rabbit hole of, like, everything would just stop. Like, if I did something that horrible, like, or, like, if I, like, accidentally hit somebody in the street or something like that, you know, like, I'll go down those rabbit holes a lot of, like, fuck, like, imagine if I just, like, hit a kid right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, God, like, how would my parents react? Would they still talk? Would they be like the sound of their voice kind of a thing? Like, could I hear that they were disappointed, or that they lost respect for me, or something like that? Like, I don't know. I'll go down those rabbit holes, which is tangential to murder kind of a thing. But I've never just been like, I'd like to fucking skin that dude. God, I can't believe he cut me. Like, you know, I mean, I've never done that before.
Yeah.
So, off topic, but
The closest I get is sometimes I'm like, you know, it'd be cool if I could just beat this dude up. Consequence free. Nobody knows. Not even him knew it was me. I could just ba ba ba, and then,
like a click remote.
like a click remote. In my head, it's more so of like a Danny Phantom thing.
Oh, okay.
Where I ghost. That's why I want to be the ghost in the scenario. I want to be a ghost who has tangential fists.
Yeah.
That I could go ooh and then punch you and then go ooh and leave.
So, anyways,
Don't murder. Fargo and Carrie are good.
yeah.
If you need more soup, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or go to our website, eatingsoupalone.com. And until next time...